Welcome, Wargamers, to a week that I've been excited to share with you for some time now as we dive into the larger-than-life backstory of the Sons of Behemat, the newest faction to join the fight for the Mortal Realms, coming in on the side of destruction. And while this army may seem utterly and completely new to many of us who jumped into AOS, say, the last year or so, the tale of Behemat is one that we've encountered before, way back at the beginning of Age of Sigmar when it first released that opening campaign called the Realm Gate War series, which I do have a whole video series about. I would suggest you go watch that because it's the second and third videos that are very consequential to who Behemat is, how he fits into this grander narrative. And so this week, we're going to take some time and explore the Sons of Behemat. Who are they, right? And in this episode in particular, we will discuss Gargants as a whole, and then tomorrow explore their mythos, what makes them unique amongst other races in the realms. Because the origin stories for destruction factions seems so much more important to their worldview and their personality than other factions. Just the way that they think about Gorkamorka and how the realms were made, it's all very fantastical, and it just really exudes a lot of character that flows out into these models. Simply put, the Sons of Behemat is a faction made entirely of Gargants, or if you are new to AOS and kind of their, alternate words for things, these are giants, just huge giants from fantasy. The name Sons of Behemat is in reference to the god-beast Behemat, who is also known as the World Titan, widely renowned as the father of Gargants, but even saying that is a lot that we need to unpack later. These are the brutish, living mountains of muscle that can be found in nearly every corner of the realms. And honestly, as far as physical commonalities, that's about it, because they do diversify quite a lot from there. Some of the Gargants are nomadic, others have a strict hunting ground that you better not trespass on. Some live by the sea, battling krakens and sharks and the occasional ship that comes too close to shore. Some have been captured and tortured and corrupted by chaos, their terrible lives now bound to the whim of some chaos lord. Others are simple, but honest hearts that can be reasoned with and even hired by the other forces as mercenaries. The point is, these huge denizens of the realms can adapt to their environment in some truly astonishing ways. There is no one Gargant, so to speak. And while I mentioned that Gargants can be incredibly diverse in their lifestyle, how they hunt, live, deal with others, there are still some similarities when it comes to their worldview. Again, there's a vast difference in the physical, how they live their lives, but when we start talking about their perspectives, a lot of them tend to line up. All Gargants respect one thing: might. Even though we often attribute, greenskins to having the most might makes right mentality, this is shared by Gargants as well, though it's cast in a somewhat different light. Rather than just physical brawn or mental cunning, the Gargants see size specifically as the final word when it comes to might, and therefore a Gargant's right to lead. And this idea that size, physical size, height and weight and so on is a sign of authority, it actually goes much deeper than just who's in charge, because their whole world, the way that they communicate, their religion and tribal culture is all based on size. For example, if you want to speak to a Gargant, you need to stand on a cliff edge or up some large tower or something like that, because if you're too small and you're too down, to the ground, they literally don't register you as anything but food. But if you're tall, well, then we can talk. Then you're a person, which is a really deep, it's that prejudice isn't the right word, but this idea that if it's as tall as me, is it worth something? Gargants, as I said, they can be alone or they can travel in tribes. Of course, the leader being the biggest, and interestingly enough, the matriarch of the tribe acts as the story keeper. It's her role to pass down the oral traditions of the tribe, and it includes this epic story of the Gargants and their predecessors, and of course Gorkamorka, but we'll cover all of that in detail tomorrow, because it's crazy, weird, alternate history stuff that's a lot of fun. And this actually sets up something that I was really curious about, is that how intelligent are they? And I gotta say, they're smarter than I thought they would be. They seem more intelligent than an ogre or a troll, but maybe less so than a human. Very primitive nature to them. But the text that we have in the Battle Tome, there are a few little side stories where they speak to other races, and they can articulate their thoughts fairly well. They're not solely driven by hunger like the ogres are. They really honestly kind of just do seem like people. Massive, territorial, easy to anger people. Their size would make it difficult to build similar structures to humans, so they probably had to evolve in a different line. It would take a forest to build a single home, is what I mean. And while they aren't defined by hunger in the same way as ogres, they are large, and so they do have to hunt and, gather at another level. But within that are things like language, bartering, craftsmanship, and so on. And what I love about them, especially from a modeling perspective, as well as just in the story, is that their size is so big that it creates a new perspective on things that we build. So for example, one of the models is swinging around a hunk of stone masonry that obviously a smaller race constructed, but he's using it as a weapon. Trees become 30-foot long clubs and that kind of stuff. It's just the scale drastically changes how all of these things can be used. Like a full, shield, a tall standing shield for a soldier might be like a knee guard for him. All in all, they don't seem malevolent by nature at all. And that's something we're going to highlight in tomorrow's video as well, is that the Gargants as a race just seem like bystanders to the epic events happening in the mortal realms. And that's not a bad thing. It's like they are natural citizens of the realms trying to do their own thing. Their glory days were in the Age of Myth, and the coming of chaos has changed their world. However, so has the Age of Sigmar, when the Stormcast unleashed from Azir. And I think in that sense, they are incredibly relatable. They could be any one of us just standing and watching these titanic events happen. Now, I say that they're, bystanders, but when they are roused to war, a Gargant tribe is a truly terrifying thing. Because individually, they work and operate as living siege weapons. When grouped together, it is like a mountain has come to life and it's looking for blood. And things have only gotten more intense since the Age of Sigmar began. The God King's actions have forever changed the world of the Gargants. We'll go into a bit more of this character tomorrow, but Behemat is an intensely important part of this faction's lore. Of course, they are named after him. He is known as the World Titan, a single behemoth so large that his head would reach into the clouds if he was standing up, and now that he's laying on his back, his feet look like mountain ranges. We'll cover his tale in depth tomorrow, but I'll just say that he was struck down by Sigmar fairly early in the Realmgate Wars. That's not much of a spoiler, the book's been out for 5 years. But what is new information is that since that event, something has slowly been changing with the Gargants of the realms. They keep getting bigger. Every day, tribes see new Gargants rise to immense stature, almost as if the death of Behemat sparked something. Now, some folks believe that this is the natural order of Gargants. They want a leader, so now that the biggest one is dead, other ones will start growing to compete to fill his spot. Others would say that this was a growth spurt that is a blessing of Gorka Morka, and whatever the reason for this transformation, this current section or chapter in the grand narrative of Age of Sigmar sees the introduction of a new threat, the Mega Gargants. And while there's no true definition of a Mega Gargant, they are unquestionably of a larger size and scale than others in their family. Some can be up to 100 feet tall, others even more so. And to understand how these seemingly, random bursts of evolution can happen and to make sense of it, scholars have broken these Mega Gargants down into 3 broad categories. The Kraken Eaters, the War Stompas, and the Gatebreakers, all of which we'll go into great detail about as we cover the tribes that they lead later on. And so this concludes the real, tangible side of the army, right? The who, what, when, where, if you will. But tomorrow we're going to get into what I think is far more interesting side of things, and that is their oral traditions. What do the Gargants think or know of world history, of these setting-wide events, and the cataclysmic struggle between order and chaos? Well, we will find out in my next episode, but for this video I wanted to pause here and discuss really upfront why I think the Sons of Behemat are so cool. For a long time now, I've talked about how I really want Games Workshop to lean into Gur, the Realm of Beasts, because I love the idea of some representation of the wild, untamed nature of the realms. We always see it being colonized by order or subjugated by, chaos, or just kind of made sterile, essentially, by death magic. But more and more, as we learn more about the setting, we see that the realms are alive. They have their own spirits, their own powers, their own ancient things going on with them, and so I want something to represent that. The fact that these are, so in commune with nature, they're territorial to an extreme, for some of them anyway, they're spread out everywhere, they're highly adaptable. The fact that they have their own history and mythos is wholly unique. I mean, it truly is. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but they just stand out as being an incredibly interesting faction, I think, representing some of nature pushing back against all these factions trying to tame it. On a very practical level, this can be an army of 6 dudes, right? It's the opposite of what I say about hordes. Typically, when I talk about hordes, I always say that, the more models you have, the more faceless they become. And so, really fleshing out the character of your leader or your general is a great way to kind of, set a narrative tone for your army. Just assume that it trickles down, because frankly, in most Black Library books, it does. But this is an army where it's somewhere between 12 and 6 dudes. I haven't done the math quite yet, but something like that, where you can give each and every single one of them a story. You can go part by part, bit by bit on their models and be like, and he achieved this at this time. He got this piece of armor ripped off a king from such and such. There's so much storytelling opportunity simply because of how few models there are. I like the fact that they are somewhat intelligent. They are not dumb at all. They just live a very, very different world with a very different worldview than us. Their tribal cultures are super interesting, and they allow for a lot more modeling opportunities, and we'll get into those later on. So friends, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you join me this week as we learn more about the Sons of Behemat. It's not a very large battle tome in terms of lore and that kind of stuff, but there is quite a few good nuggets of information there that I do want to share. And so how we're going to do it is tomorrow we're going to talk about their mythos, how they see the creation and the drama of the mortal realms. And the next couple days we'll be talking about the Mega Gargants and basically talking about the kind of tribes they would lead. So if you're looking at the battle tome, basically if you have a certain one of the Mega Gargants as your general, it becomes a part of one of the 3 tribes specifically, and so we're going to explore those as we talk about the Mega Gargants that lead them. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Go ahead and let me know what you'd like to see after this, and we'll go ahead and make those videos happen. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in my next episode. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.